Long before human eyes learned to open, before dust shaped itself into flesh, a quiet angel named Namtel walked the endless courts of heaven, carrying the weight of memory across halls forged from living light. Unlike Michael, who thundered through battle, or Gabriel, who spoke revelations like lightning, Namtel's steps were soft, for he served as a watcher of divine scrolls, a keeper of prophecies, and a recorder of hidden intention. He walked not with power, but with awareness, observing creation bloom like fire across the void, and writing its secrets with hands that trembled at beauty too holy to name. What set Namtel apart was not his duty, but the tenderness beating inside him, a sensitivity rare among the ancient scribes who moved like cold stars through eternity. While other angels saw humanity as a fragile experiment balancing between glory and dust, Namtel saw humanity as a masterpiece shaped with trembling affection by a God who desired relationship, not perfection. When Lucifer began whispering elegant questions about freedom, authority, and the meaning of obedience, Namtel didn't rebel, but he listened with a heart torn between loyalty and understanding. He saw truth in heaven's order, yet he also sensed the ache behind Lucifer's questions, an ache that felt too familiar, too close to emotions he never confessed. And in that silent conflict of compassion, Namtel made the one mistake that would echo through eternity. He hesitated when loyalty demanded clarity. The day heaven split open with war, when 1/3 of the stars were swept away like sparks from a dying fire, Namtel did not roar with rage, nor draw a sword, nor defend the throne with holy flame. He simply stood still, grieving both sides, God's wounded order and Lucifer's wounded pride, and in that stillness, he became counted among the fallen. He fell not as a traitor, but as a broken heart slipping from a shattered sky, descending with the scrolls he had guarded since the first dawn of creation. As other angels screamed, cursed, burned, and tore their way downward, Namtel plummeted in silence, crushed not by punishment but by the unbearable weight of regret. He entered the abyss like one enters a grave, not with rebellion, but with the sadness of a witness who saw too much and understood too deeply. The abyss was no warm fire, no familiar hell, no lake prepared for demons. It was a realm where time bled into nothingness and memory warped into tormenting echoes. The ancients called it the outer darkness, a place where fallen watchers wandered chained by despair, where silence pressed like a heavy hand and shadows observed from corners untouched by light. Namtel clutched his scrolls to his chest, trying to write truth in a place built on distortion, but his ink dissolved, his lines twisted, his memories rebelled against his own hand. Yet even among the fallen he was a stranger. Lucifer never claimed him, and the other demons never fully trusted him because he carried something they had lost: hope. They saw him roaming the darkness like a silent ghost, refusing to kneel to the Prince of Rebellion, refusing to indulge in hatred, choosing only to watch and remember. Namtel became a legend among the damned, the scribe without allegiance, a fallen angel who still walked like he expected morning to return. And deep within that darkness, where even Lucifer's eyes dared not linger, Namtel discovered a thin, trembling veil between realms, a boundary where heaven and the abyss brushed for a moment like two opposing breaths. From beyond the veil came a whisper, not demonic, not angelic, but ancient, older than prophecy, older than the rebellion itself, wrapped in a voice that neither tempted nor threatened. It asked him a single question, one that pierced his sorrow like a blade dipped in truth. Why do you still carry the scrolls? Namtel answered in silence, for speech had long abandoned him. Because if I do not remember truth, no one will. The whisper shifted, unfolding visions that did not belong to the past, but to an approaching future, a future so heavy that even the abyss seemed to freeze around him. What the whisper revealed was a war far more devastating than the first rebellion, a conflict that would shake every realm and leave heaven trembling. With trembling hands, Namtel wrote everything shown to him: horrors, betrayals, names, and shadows that even light feared. The scroll he crafted in that darkness was no longer a record of divine memory, but a dangerous prophecy, a weapon disguised as testimony. The moment he finished, something inside him understood that this revelation could not remain in hell, nor could it remain in the hands of any fallen being. And so Namtel did what no fallen angel had ever dared. He walked back toward heaven's gates, not as a beggar seeking forgiveness, but as a witness carrying a burden beyond himself. The seraphim guarding the gates lifted flaming swords when they recognized him, their eyes burning like newborn suns, ready to strike down the traitor who dared return. Namtel did not defend himself, nor plead innocence. He knelt with the scroll wrapped in chains of divine light he forged from his own sorrow-soaked grace. Then the battlefield quieted as Michael emerged, the archangel whose loyalty had never cracked, whose sword still hummed from ancient war. Michael thundered, "Namtel, why have you returned?" The fallen scribe bowed his head and whispered, "Because what I carry belongs to neither heaven nor hell, and it cannot remain with me." Michael expected defiance, pride, or deception, but what he saw in Namtel's face was pure fear, not of punishment, not of judgment, but of a future too dark for even angels to comprehend. Bound by heaven's laws, Namtel was led before the throne where unworthy beings are unmade simply by standing too close to holiness. Yet God allowed him to speak, a mercy no rebellious angel had ever received, and Namtel unrolled the scroll, revealing only its surface without reading its secrets aloud. Even the 24 elders turned their faces away, for something in that chained parchment hummed with a terror older than scripture. Namtel said only, "This was never meant to be lost, but neither should it be known before its time." God read the scroll, and heaven fell silent for 7 days, the kind of silence that makes eternity hold its breath. When the silence ended, a decree was made that would alter heaven's story forever. Namtel would be allowed to return, but not to his former glory. He would not join the scribes again, nor walk among choirs, nor sit among the watchers. Instead, he would live on the outer edges of heaven, unseen, uncelebrated, but allowed to exist. The scroll he brought back was sealed in 7 layers of divine silence, hidden in a chamber where no light dared to shine. Only God could unseal it, and only at the appointed end. The rest of heaven resumed its harmony, but Namtel carried a new burden, the knowledge that his purpose was not finished, that the warning he bore could ignite the end of all creation. The few angels who glimpsed the scroll's surface without reading its content fell into fasting and trembling, shaken by a dread too deep to explain. Some believed the scroll contained the name of a future betrayer, an angel who would rise against heaven during the last days. Others thought it revealed what God whispered to Lucifer before casting him down, a secret that made the fallen prince smile even as he fell. Whatever truth the scroll held, it was dangerous enough to silence heaven itself. Namtel became a lonely sentinel, the quiet keeper of a secret he could never speak, condemned not by guilt but by knowledge too heavy for even angels to bear. He wandered the edges of eternity, watching creation unfold, waiting for signs the prophecy might begin to awaken. Every time he saw an angel falter, he wondered if the name in the scroll belonged to them, if the shadow he carried was starting to rise. Every time he looked toward earth and saw darkness spreading, he wondered if the first tremors of the final rebellion had begun. Heaven did not celebrate him, but neither did it condemn him. He existed in a sacred loneliness, a living warning wrapped in fragile obedience. His life became a long prayer of silence, a testimony that truth can be so powerful it becomes a burden rather than a gift. But even in his quiet exile, Namtel kept watching, writing, listening for the trembling sound of prophecy stirring beneath creation's breath. He understood now why God had allowed him to fall, not as punishment, but as preparation, for only someone who had walked through both light and darkness could recognize the shadow that would return. And though heaven did not fully trust him, it needed him, for he alone carried the memory of what lurked beyond the veil. Namtel often wondered why God chose him, a fragile-hearted scribe, to bear a secret capable of ending heaven's peace. Perhaps it was because he felt deeply, because he listened carefully, because he carried compassion where other angels carried certainty. His curse was not damnation, it was awareness, a constant reminder that truth can bruise even the purest souls. As ages passed, stories of him faded, whispered only by mystics and watchers too old to forget. Some said he roamed heaven's borders at night, recording the tears angels never admitted shedding. Others said he stood beside the beds of humans who were breaking, writing their quiet courage in the margins of eternity. Whatever the truth, Namtel remained unseen, yet always watching, always writing, always waiting. Some nights, when the stars flickered with spiritual unrest, he touched the place where the scroll was sealed, feeling its silent heartbeat beneath eternity. He knew its time had not come, but he also knew that day would arrive like a whisper breaking mountains. And when that day dawned, he alone would stand between prophecy and fulfillment, bearing witness to the truth he carried from darkness. Until then, he waited. A fallen angel returned but never restored, a servant of heaven who walked on the edge of its light. His story became a reminder that sometimes the greatest battles are not fought with swords, but with secrets held in trembling hands. And though heaven did not speak of him, the silence around his existence was louder than any hymn. For everyone knew that when the scroll opened, the end would begin, not with trumpets, but with the whisper of a scribe. And somewhere beyond eternity, the future trembled at the memory of Namtel's return from the abyss. That trembling was only the beginning, because the prophecy he carried had not yet taken its first breath. The heavens waited, the abyss remembered. Earth unknowingly played its part, and Namtel, lonely, quiet, burdened, stood on the border, knowing the storm was far from over. His fall had not broken him, his return had not freed him, his burden had not crushed him, but the prophecy he carried would one day force every realm to face truth sharper than any sword. And the silence that followed him everywhere was the sound of heaven waiting to see what would rise next. For the end of his story had not yet begun, and the scroll still slept beneath 7 seals of divine stillness. Namtel stood at the border of eternity, the glowing horizon stretching before him like an ocean trapped between time and infinity, and he wondered how long a soul could wait before purpose finally calls its name. Though heaven allowed him to exist within its light, his presence felt like a footnote written in the margins of creation, a necessary truth hidden beneath layers of divine silence. Each day he heard the distant choirs singing glory across the endless sky, but their voices never reached him fully. He lived in the thin shadow between praise and prophecy. He watched angels come and go, radiant with purpose, each carrying assignments that shaped worlds and nations, while he remained anchored to a secret he could not share. Sometimes he felt like a ghost drifting through a paradise that remembered his failure more than his faithfulness, though neither accusation nor forgiveness was ever spoken aloud. Yet the weight he carried was heavier than exile, heavier than silence, for the sealed scroll contained a truth capable of unraveling heaven's harmony. That truth pulsed like a living heart beneath its 7 divine seals, whispering faint echoes of a future betrayal that would strike the throne from within. And on days when creation trembled under spiritual storms, Namtel felt the scroll vibrate softly, like a distant warning awakening ahead of its time. He did not know the fullness of what lay within the seals, for he had never dared read beyond the first few lines shown to him in the abyss. But he knew enough to fear the day the scroll would open, because the prophecy inside carried a name, one that would shatter heaven's trust forever. Some whispered the betrayer would rise not from the ranks of fallen angels, but from heaven's most loyal circle, a revelation too terrifying for even the seraphim to contemplate. Namtel walked along the edges of heaven's veil, recording the faint tremors he sensed in the spiritual realm, documenting warnings that only he could interpret. He became heaven's silent historian, a watcher whose presence was rarely acknowledged yet deeply needed by the God who alone understood the magnitude of his burden. Though he felt unseen, God saw every step he took, for Namtel's exile was less punishment and more preparation for the storm approaching creation. At night, he observed humanity, its struggles, its tears, its stubborn hope, and he realized something profound. Humans embraced frailty with courage angels rarely understood. He watched mothers forgiving sons, fathers sacrificing dreams for their families, and broken souls choosing kindness despite their wounds. In these quiet acts of mercy, Namtel saw reflections of the reason he fell, because he felt too deeply, because he cared too fiercely, because he understood the beauty of imperfection. That same tenderness which caused his descent was now the reason God entrusted him with knowledge too dangerous for the unbroken. One evening, the veil between realms flickered violently, like a curtain trembling in a sudden storm, and Namtel felt the shift ripple across every fiber of creation. He turned toward the sealed chamber where the scroll slept, sensing its faint heartbeat quicken as if echoing an approaching danger. Something, or someone, was moving in the shadows of eternity, and the prophecy inside the scroll stirred like a creature awakening. Namtel's hands shook, but he steadied himself, knowing fear was a luxury he could no longer indulge, for the storm he had glimpsed in the abyss was drawing near. He knelt, touching the ground, listening for the kind of silence that speaks louder than thunder, and in that stillness he heard a whisper only he could discern. It said, "The signs have begun." His breath caught, for he had waited countless ages for those 3 words, and though he had expected them, hearing them felt like being struck by a star. He rose and moved toward the chamber, where a nameless guardian angel stood before the sealed scroll, its presence cloaked in a mystery deeper than the throne room itself. The guardian did not speak, for its existence was purely function, without voice, without face, without identity, yet Namtel felt its awareness shift toward him. "It trembles," Namtel whispered, not as a question but as a truth he could no longer ignore. The guardian's wings shifted in acknowledgement, a subtle motion that carried the weight of heaven's concern. Namtel approached the scroll cautiously, feeling the divine seals radiate a cold, sacred pressure that pushed against his chest like the breath of God. He sensed fear and sorrow woven into the seals, as though heaven itself regretted the knowledge hidden behind them. Touching the first layer felt like placing his hand on history's pulse, and he recoiled from the overwhelming flood of unspoken warnings. For a moment he wondered if he had misunderstood his purpose, if he had misread the whisper in the abyss, if he was never meant to carry such a burden. But as doubt coiled around his heart, he remembered the voice that asked why he still carried the scroll, and his soul steadied at the memory of his answer. "Because if I do not remember truth, no one will." His purpose was not to reveal the prophecy or interpret its timing, but to witness its signs and guide heaven's attention when the final shadow rose. And now, that shadow stirred. He walked back toward the edge of heaven, where light dissolved into a horizon of unfolding worlds, and he felt the tremors intensifying across creation. Nations on earth whispered of rising darkness, hearts grew cold, faith flickered under the weight of confusion, and souls moved closer to despair. Yet in the midst of the chaos, small lights appeared, humans choosing mercy, forgiveness, and and courage that defied the growing storm. As he watched these moments unfold, Namtel understood why God allowed humans to exist with fragile hearts capable of unimaginable strength. They were proof that even in the shadow of prophecy, light could still rise from the ground. And perhaps, when the final betrayal came, humanity would stand as heaven's unexpected ally, bearing witness with the same courage Namtel carried in his quiet exile. That night, Namtel felt a presence beside him, not a seraph, not a guardian, but something familiar, something that reminded him of the veil where the ancient whisper spoke. A ripple in the air formed, and a voice, older than language, spoke softly. The betrayer awakened. Namtel's heart clenched, his wings trembling as he absorbed the reality he had dreaded for ages. The prophecy inside the scroll was no longer asleep. Its shadow had crossed into creation, and there was no turning back. Will heaven survive it? He asked, his voice breaking with fear and fragile hope. The whisper responded, heaven survives truth, but not silence. Namtel understood instantly. The time for passive waiting was ending. He was no longer merely a recorder, but a messenger forged by exile. Though he could not reveal the prophecy, he could prepare heaven, guiding the watchful towards subtle signs that pointed to the approaching betrayal. He moved through heaven's borders with urgency, documenting shifts in the spiritual realm, observing angels whose purpose had become clouded or conflicted. Every flicker of doubt, every shadow of pride, every tremble of uncertainty became a clue in Namtel's expanding record. He did not accuse, for accusations sparked premature war. He simply observed, writing truths heaven did not yet know it needed. His lines were long, his records heavy, his silence deeper than any song sung within heaven's radiant halls. And though he carried no sword, his pen became a weapon forged in both light and darkness, capable of guiding heaven through the storm that approached. Some angels began to sense something stirring in him, a quiet authority shaped by suffering, and they watched him with a mixture of reverence and unease. For though Namtel had once fallen, he now walked with a gravity that felt almost prophetic, as if his exile carved wisdom into the core of his being. One young angel approached him, hesitant yet curious, and whispered, "Why do you walk alone every night?" Namtel answered, "Because truth rarely walks with crowds." The angel nodded, sensing more than understanding, and Namtel felt a small spark of connection, something he had long thought lost. He continued his watch, recording every subtle sign, knowing he was gathering the pieces of a future that only God fully comprehended. But one night, while observing the outer horizon, he sensed a disturbance unlike anything he had felt since the abyss. A shadow crossed through heaven, not external, not demonic, but born from within, subtle yet powerful, moving with purpose. His heart froze, for the shadow carried the signature of an angel, one whose identity remained hidden yet dangerously familiar. The betrayer had taken their first step. Namtel wrote it down with trembling hands, knowing this was the beginning of the prophecy's awakening. Heaven did not yet feel the shift, but soon it would, and when that moment came, silence would become impossible. He walked back toward the sealed chamber, sensing the scroll hum with energy as though recognizing its own unfolding future. The guardian angel looked at him, wings trembling faintly, and for the first time in eternity, its faceless presence leaned forward as if listening. Namtel whispered, "It has begun." The guardian did not move, but the air around it tightened, vibrating with the tension of divine awareness awakening to danger. Namtel stepped back and watched the seals pulse with faint light, each one responding to the unfolding prophecy with dread-laced recognition. The future approached like a whisper turning into a storm, and all creation trembled beneath its shadow. Namtel turned toward Earth once more, watching humanity live unaware of the cosmic drama unfolding beyond the veil. But he did not despair. He felt a strange hope rising as he saw ordinary people choosing compassion even in suffering. He realized their small lights were echoes of the courage heaven would one day need, proof that goodness could still rise even when prophecy darkened the sky. And so he continued his watch, knowing the final war would not begin with thunder, but with a whisper only the brave could hear. Though heaven did not celebrate him, though his name was forgotten in most records, Namtel stood ready to fulfill the purpose carved into him by both fall and grace. For when the scroll is unsealed, and the world trembles beneath the weight of divine revelation, Namtel will be the one who steps forward, not as a hero, but as a witness. And in that moment, creation will finally understand why a fallen angel was allowed to return with a secret meant only for the end. Until then, the scroll sleeps, Namtel waits, and heaven breathes in the silence before prophecy wakes. Make sure to hit that subscribe button for more interesting Bible stories about angels.